might be the pick.
Yeah, so he, as you mentioned, CEO of Exxon, so Rex Tillerson, there's some video of him. And then a couple of other names we heard this week, Gary Cohn. This is a controversial pick. He's now the White House National Economic Council that Trump picked. Of course, he comes from Goldman Sachs. So he even ran ads against Goldman Sachs during the campaign, calling them part of the problem, the power structure on Wall Street. So that'll be interesting to see. We can ask Rudy about that.
But if it was Rex Tillerson, it would be an extension of this idea that America's open for business. You've got a different orientation as to why you have a Secretary of State, is to make sure that America's engagement of the world benefits America and American companies and American workers, in addition to all the national security
I think that's right. And he's got a deep understanding of places like Russia, an incredibly important part of the world for us to figure out. Also the Middle East, that he's had a lot of business with.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty good.
But it's also important that if it is Tillerson, that he surrounds himself with people that have a real deep handling on foreign policy, maybe areas that he's not as familiar with.
There was some contention during the campaign, you'll recall, of course, with House Speaker Paul Ryan and the Trump campaign. And he had marshaled really Republicans in the House to sort of keep their eye on their own paper and really focus on their own.
It's a good way to put it. Keep your eye on your own paper.
And so Paul Ryan he met with Donald Trump recently, and he was asked about this opposition during the election season. I think it's a good interview to play here. Take a listen.
Why was it so hard,
Look,
even after he was a nominee?
I was basically focused on keeping the House Republican, and I was very concerned about whether or not we could lose the House Republican majority. As you remember, if you know, Speaker of the House, your primary responsibility is to save House Republicans. My biggest fear, the Black Swan event we were worried about, was just think of having a Hillary Clinton presidency, a Democrat Senate run by Chuck Schumer, and a Democrat House run by Nancy Pelosi. That, to me, was the horrible scenario that I was trying to guard against.
That could have happened. It's interesting. I mean, I remember up until the very end, we thought it was very likely that the Senate could have gone that way.
Yeah, but that's also, it's not an admission that actively they were rejecting Donald Trump. I mean, that's what he was doing in that process. You can't just say, I'm focusing on the House, because if you felt like you were going to benefit from the nominee, then you would absorb that as well. I mean, that's what he did. I mean, you should, I think, own up to that fact and say, hey, listen, made the wrong call.
Yeah, canceled events with him, you know, in the wake of the tape that came out and other things. I mean, he was very vocal about it.
Absolutely. They're not canceling events anymore. I don't think.
He has no choice.
As far as we know.
He has no choice now. He's got to work.
And the information coming out is that they talk a lot. That Donald Trump recognizes that Paul Ryan is the guy that's going to have to get these things through the House, and Paul Ryan recognizes, look at the cabinet, look at the policies. What an amazing generational opportunity to get a conservative agenda.
I think it's remarkable that Donald Trump has grown closer to people that he was so opposed to or with during the campaign. It says a lot that he has Nikki Haley in his cabinet now, that he's having meetings with Al Gore at Trump Tower.
That's a great point. Leonardo DiCaprio the other day as well.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But speaking of Paul Ryan, I mean, the most important thing that he's got to get done in the early days of taking office is trying to get things passed. In Congress, like tax reform. That would be huge for him. So you've got to work with Paul Ryan and others.
They can't blame Democrats this time. It's all on them now.
Yeah, that's a good point. We do have some other headlines to get to. And just minutes ago, President-elect Donald Trump taking to Twitter, responding to reports that he will remain an executive producer on the hit NBC show, The Apprentice, while in the White House. Mr. Trump tweeting this: I have nothing to do with The Apprentice except for the fact that I have conceived it with Mark B and have a big stake in it. Will devote zero time. Well, reports by CNN that I will be working on The Apprentice during my presidency, even part-time, are ridiculous and untrue fake news with an exclamation point. And there's this. Late last night, Congress narrowly avoiding yet another government shutdown after Senate Democrats caved on a bill to fund the government through April of next year. And that bill passed with less than an hour to go before the midnight deadline. Red state Democrats were trying to tack on health care benefits for retired coal miners in an effort to appeal to Donald Trump's voters, but ultimately that attempt failed. And when President-elect Donald Trump looks out over the National Mall for his inauguration, he will not see a sea of protesters, tens of thousands of people planning to rally against Mr. Trump on January 20th. They will not be granted permits to do so. That includes areas of the Washington Monument, the National Mall, and the Lincoln Memorial. And Santa is deploying some adorable little helpers this year. These penguins stealing hearts as they stroll through the garden of a Japanese park. The birds are sporting red and green Santa outfits, as you can see there, complete with bells to spread some Christmas cheer. No word yet if they will be delivering any gifts on Christmas Eve. How cute are they?
Well, they can't hold a lot of presents with their flippers, so you need fingers. That's why the elves are not out of a job.
Isn't it Japan that also had the reindeer delivering pizza or Santa?
Yes.
They're winning the season right now with creative ideas.
They totally are.
Yeah.
Rick, what do you think?
We need our own penguins.
Yeah, can we get a show?
We should.
Just like hang out right here.
That's right.
I bet the ratings would go way up. All right, so it's really chilly out there. A lot of people, I think, have noticed that, especially across the far northern tier of the country. Along with that, we have some snow today. You see just kind of some light snow across northeastern Colorado, up around Norfolk and around Columbus. Today, that is going to kind of strengthen here, though. The stripe right here where you see across parts of Minnesota and Iowa, and likely we'll see a band of about 5 to 8 inches, maybe from Chicago up towards Milwaukee. So get ready for some pretty significant snow. Once that snow's in place, you end up kind of reinforcing the cold. So here's where the actual air temperatures right now: minus 14 in Bismarck, minus 18 in Minot. You get the idea. Factor in a little bit of wind, and it feels much, much colder than that. The cold air kind of retreats a little bit up in towards Canada. This is Monday and Tuesday, but watch what happens. Next week, it comes right back here across the eastern part of the country. And so winter, guys, is here. It's December.
Another reason to have penguins on set.
Exactly. They would fit right in.
Be cozy.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick. All right, a stunning new report from the U.S. government claiming the Russians helped Donald Trump win the election. But as shocking as that sounds, it's Trump's response that's getting all the attention this morning.
And just when you thought Hollywood was totally out of touch, this year's Oscar for Best Supporting Actress might go to a man.
What?
Well, President Obama not willing to accept the election, calling for a full investigation into allegations that Russia hacked and changed the outcome of the election.
But President-elect Donald Trump is not buying that.
Our own Garrett Tenney live from Washington, D.C. to break it all down for us. Good morning, Garrett.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning, y'all. You know, even within the intelligence community, there is still a lot of disagreement exactly over who it was that was hacked and why. But the Washington Post is now reporting that the CIA has concluded in a secret assessment that Russia intervened in the election to help Donald Trump win the race. The agency shared its conclusions with key senators in a closed-door briefing last week, according to the Post, and one key piece of evidence that led them to that conclusion was the findings that the Republican National Committee was also hacked, but never had any of its emails made public. Now, the RNC has consistently said its networks were never compromised, so there was nothing to be leaked. And throughout the campaign and again yesterday, President-elect Donald Trump has dismissed the intelligence community's findings that Russia is responsible for these cyber attacks. In a statement, his transition team went right after the intelligence community, saying, "These are the same people that said Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. The election ended a long time ago in one of the biggest electoral college victories in history. It's now time to move on and make America great again." All of this comes after the White House announced yesterday that President Obama has ordered a full review of the hacking that took place in the election, which he wants completed before he leaves office. Republicans are criticizing that move, though, saying the White House is simply trying to give some political cover to Hillary Clinton for losing the race, an assertion the administration denies.
This is not an effort to challenge the outcome of the election. So we're not calling into question the election results. We are taking seriously our responsibility to protect the integrity of those elections.
Now, the White House went on to say that this review will extend beyond this past election to look at cyber attacks on the U.S.'s political system as a whole, and it says it wants to have that report ready for the next administration to be able to take action. Back to y'all.
All right, thank you, Garrett. We were talking about this earlier this morning, and I do think there is a general concern, regardless of where you fall politically, about hacking and about what Russia can do in terms of getting into our systems and our emails and everything else. This time it was Democrats, but who knows? In 4 years, it could be Republicans. This is something that affects everyone across the board.
Or it could be national security. Forget, looking at DNC emails or RNC emails. Who cares? Looking at national security emails, or looking at the CIA itself.
There are so many dedicated professionals at the CIA and elsewhere, so you never want to impugn the motives. But at the same time, we have seen politicized departments and politicized processes from the Obama administration. So, and it's not as if all the intelligence assessments, in the Washington Post piece, it goes on to point out that not everyone agreed with these assessments, and there's no direct evidence that it was directed by the Kremlin, even though we know they've got tentacles all over the place. But still, bad no matter what. You don't want them attempting to interfere, and clearly they tried at many levels.
Also do think there's some people that just do not want to accept the election results, and so they'll use any opportunity to point fingers of blame wherever that is. All right. Coming up, this illegal immigrant deported 8 times, now wanted for a deadly hit and run. But some in California want the entire state to become a sanctuary state. The daughter of our next guest was killed by an illegal, and his message for the Golden State is next.
Sanctuary state. Okay. And Al Gore's inconvenient truth about to get twice as inconvenient. We'll see.
We are back with some news by the numbers. First, $1.2 billion. That is the record-breaking amount of cash Hillary Clinton spent on her losing presidential effort. President-elect Trump won, spending about half of that amount. Next, 3%. That is how much stocks rose on Friday. Another record high since the election. Traders remaining optimistic about Mr. Trump's business policies. And finally, 2. That is how many inconvenient truth moves Al Gore will have forced America to sit through come 2017. The follow-up to the 2006 climate change film will premiere at next January's Sundance Film Festival. Clayton.
During this campaign, I had a chance to meet the amazing families of the Remembrance Project, parents whose children were killed by illegal immigrants. A Trump administration will end this long nightmare of violence.
President-elect Donald Trump promising justice for those families who have lost loved ones at the hands of illegal immigrants. And right now, a manhunt is underway for an illegal immigrant. This guy, he was deported a whopping 8 times, suspected in a deadly hit and run earlier this week. All of this news comes as lawmakers push for the entire state of California to become one massive sanctuary city, a sanctuary state. Here to react is immigration reform activist Ray Tranchen. His daughter and her friend were killed by an illegal immigrant in Virginia Beach in 2007. Nice to see you this morning, Ray. We're sorry for your loss. Good morning to you.
Thank you.
You had a chance to meet the president-elect. Was that part of the Remembrance Project when you met with him? What did he say to you?
Well, he was very sympathetic. He promised us that he would end sanctuary cities. He promised us that he would build a wall and stop the flood of illegal immigrants. The joke was that the closer Hillary came to winning the election, there were as many illegals coming over the border as there were gun sales in the United States. And I'm not trying to make a parallel to that, but it was kind of funny. But the bottom line is that he's a very compassionate guy. When you talk to him in person, he looks you in the eye, and when he tells you something, I believe that it's pretty credible.
Well, this morning we're learning that Oakland, of course, has asked the governor's office in California to consider, because they already have laws on the books there in Oakland, which bar law enforcement from doing these immigration raids and basically deporting any illegal immigrants. They're asking the governor's office now to make California a sanctuary state. When you heard that, what did you think?
Yeah, I think it's a last move of desperation for the open borders, sanctuary city people. I think if you look at the data, probably 70% of the United States do not want sanctuary cities. So I think it's just publicity. It's not going to happen. I think the thing that disturbs me the most, though, is that the district attorney in Los Angeles is not willing to give the Cali gang database to the federal government. And what that is basically is it's the data that they've been accumulating over the past 10 years of gang members.
What happened to your daughter, Ray? Ray, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us the story? What happened to your daughter?
Well, her and her friend were just out, getting a pack of gum at 10 o'clock at night, and she was rear-ended by a young man who was an illegal immigrant who had several other violations in the Tidewater area and released. He had a fake Florida driver's license. He had absolutely no insurance. He was 3 times the legal limit of alcohol abuse, and the speed limit on the boulevard was 45 miles an hour. The girls were sitting at a stoplight just chatting and listening to the radio, and he hit him from behind at 75 miles an hour and killed him immediately.
What would you want people who are supportive of sanctuary cities to know this morning?
Well, I would have to say that the real impact is the story that I just told you. It happens every day. They worry more about splitting their families up. They talk a lot about tearing up families, but the people who are victims of illegal immigrant crimes, I can't describe how it tears up our families. I mean, in the case of sanctuary cities, if someone is deported, you know, the families are separated, but ultimately no one dies.
Right.
In our case, we have funerals, and we never get to see our family again. So I don't see how you can compare the two, and I think the legislatures, the people that are pushing these things, apparently have not been victims of illegal visitor crimes.
Well, no one knows that pain quite like you do, Ray. We appreciate you joining us this morning. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Anytime.
All right, coming up here on the show, general outrage from the left over some of the president-elect's cabinet picks.
3 generals so far. Is that too many generals?
People have been, you know, mired in controversy about the number of generals.
But isn't having generals a good thing? Our military panel here to discuss. That's next. And drama behind the scenes of Duck Dynasty. Why 2 producers were just fired and sued.
On the military, we will show the whole world that America is strong again. We're going to have the strongest military in the world, the most updated military in the world. We believe in peace through strength. We will, however, get rid of ISIS. I'm sorry, we will get rid of ISIS. ISIS has to go. We will do everything in our power to keep radical, Islamic terrorists the hell out of our country.
Strong words from the president-elect and outrage on the left as Donald Trump turns to top military brass for key cabinet roles.
The president-elect intends to nominate General John Kelly to lead Homeland Security. 3 generals so far. Is that too many generals?
People have been, you know, mired in controversy about the number of generals that Donald Trump seems to be attracted to.
I'm getting a lot of heartburn, Wolf, over the fact that he is populating other positions, key positions in the cabinet with other generals. That raises further question about whether there's really going to be civilian leadership.
The president-elect so far recruiting 3 retired generals, and he may want as many as 5. But why isn't this a good thing? Let's bring in our distinguished military panel: retired Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, retired Marine Staff Sergeant Johnny Joey Jones, and retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. General, I'll start with you. 3 generals so far, maybe more. Any reason for concern about the military-civilian oversight?
Well, you know, Pete, think about the fact that Barack Obama had 3 generals right out of the chute in his administration. He had Denny Blair at DNI, he had Rick Shinseki at Veterans Affairs, and then he had Jim Jones as his national security advisor. There was never a complaint. Look, being a retired general, having a successful military career should not be a penalty. Remember that these people are civilians now, so I think that this whole thing is just a lot to do over nothing.
Colonel Shaffer, is it, to his point, is it just generals, or is it the wrong generals from the left? Because, you know, as he pointed out, there were 3 generals at the beginning for Barack Obama.
Pete, it's any general who's competent. Look, this is the end of the high school debate team being in charge of national security. The current crew, Susan Rice and Ben Rhodes, are completely incompetent. They have been the stewards of the bad foreign policy. Jay Johnson, a DHS DHS is a freaking lawyer, for goodness sake. And of course, look at what's going on with the DOD with Ash Carter. Ash Carter is a career bureaucrat. So what has to be done is clear. They have to repair the past 8 years of neglect, malfeasance, and incompetence. So you've got to bring in people who actually have an understanding of the issues, who have studied them their entire life. And frankly, these are the right generals at the right time. So, and as General Boykin pointed out, they're retired. They're just like us. They have the right to be employed. Kudos to Mr. Trump for hiring veterans.
Staff Sergeant, as somebody who's walked the ground, what does it say to the ground pounder that this president is choosing warfighters like this at the top?
Well, you know, it says everything. General Mattis specifically, when that Secretary of Defense has to make some tough decisions, those men and women on the ground will know that he's fought for them all the way to the end, and if it's a tough decision, they'll believe in that decision. Morale is huge when it comes to winning a war. Morale is huge when it comes to securing this country. So the generals specifically that have been chosen so far, you know, General Kelly has given everything to this country. We're talking about generals who have spent 20 to 30 years in active combat and understand the cost of war and the cost of securing this country. They haven't, you know, this is 2016, we've been at war for 15, 16 years. And, you know, if you count the late 90s, some of these generals have been operational for most of their career. And that's important. They have experience. When you talk about drain the swamp, where else can you go to find a non-political person that's competent in these roles? I think these are amazing picks. And absolutely, I think when you just have to have something to argue about what they did in their past career, I guess.
Great points, all. Unfortunately, we have to leave it right there. There's also reports out this morning that the Pentagon is drawing up stronger plans, pulling power away from the White House to the Pentagon to execute the fight against ISIS. I think something all of us can agree. Less politicians and speechwriters and more generals and operators involved in the process. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your expertise. We'll talk to you again very soon.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Take care.
All right, now to some headlines from Abby Huntsman.
Thank you, Pete. All right, to some quick headlines now. The pilot of a deadly hot air balloon crash in Texas had 7 different drugs in his system at the time of that accident. Medical experts testifying to the NTSB that Alfred Skip Nichols was prescribed to at least a dozen medications, including Valium, Oxycontin, and Ritalin, which legally should have prevented him from flying. Nichols was piloting that balloon back in July before hitting power lines and crashing, killing himself and 15 other people. So sad. Well, Duck Dynasty producers are fired, and now it's the TV hit show. They're in some hot water from their bosses. They are fired, now facing a lawsuit from its parent company, apparently.
You can't always get what you want, but sometimes
vegan sandwiches don't taste good when you get them in 3 seconds, let alone 40 minutes. I'm going to wait 40 minutes for a vegan sandwich, Rick.
Yeah, I've never ordered one. So, yeah,
Not starting today.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, we have a nice crowd out here. Everybody's saying it's a little bit chilly. You're a little chilly?
It's a little chilly.
She's worried about the wind chill out here. There's not that much wind, but it is certainly chilly. 30 degrees right here, at least according to the thermometer across the street. Take a look at the weather maps. Show you what's going on. There you go. Officially 29 in New York, but the cold air is up across the far northern plains. 1 right now in Rapid City, 4 in Minneapolis. It is windy along with that in the northern plains, so the wind chills are in like the minus 20 to 30 range. Today across the northeast and down towards the mid-Atlantic, not a bad day, but certainly one of the cooler ones we've had so far. This weekend will be the coldest weekend that we've had so far this year. Actually, get ready because even colder air comes in next week. A little bit more lake effect snow that will be flying throughout the day, but aside from that, we're not the snow not as heavy as it was. And down to the southeast, tons of sunshine, chilly temps, but plenty of sunshine for everyone. All right, guys, we will send it back to you.
Thank you.
Inside.
Meanwhile, 70 degrees in Florida. That sounds nice.
Hey, that's where I want to be.
Thank
Weren't you
Rick.
just there?
Yes, maybe I should go back.
Yeah. Well, we always usually go to cold places, though. That's where the blue wall was, cold places. So
Exactly.
That's where we go. Yeah.
All right, Clayton?
Well, many people would call Hillary Clinton a hypocrite for condemning fake news stories. So if that's the case, then what would you call Brian Williams? This morning, he's on a mission to promote the truth. Daniel Halper is here to react next to that.
Still looking for that perfect Christmas gift for your kid? Look no further than that table and Mr. Clayton Morris. He's here to help. He's got some high-tech ideas for you coming up. He won't even be able to see you.
He's in his element.
Remember NBC reporter Brian Williams, who was fired for reporting false news stories during his time in Iraq. Well, now he's on a new mission to warn people of the dangers of fake news. I kid you not. Take a look.
Flynn's son was fired by the Trump transition today for passing on fake news stories via Twitter. But his dad, the retired Army 3-star general, has passed on